What was it like for you once you realized you had made parole? After 24, 25 years.
25 years.
Knowing that now the day is coming, you're going to make parole.
Hey, it was, you're going to make me cry. Still a shock.
Yeah. So this is the second part of my discussion with Calvin Green. This part is exclusively about his time as a seminary student while incarcerated. He was a part of the first ever regionally accredited seminary program in the state of Texas prison system. It's important that you know that it was regionally accredited because there are a lot of so-called Bible colleges and religious and theological institutes and seminaries that are involved in the prison system. A lot of them give out degrees and confer titles that are illegitimate, and they are, in my opinion, ripping people off. But the seminary program he was a part of was legit. It was regionally accredited by the same organizations that credit places like Texas A&M and University of Texas. So he talks about his first few years in prison as a seminary student. A quick caveat about this is that the camera I had focused on him died for the first 13 minutes of the interview, and I didn't know it. I'm not a videographer. This is not my trade. I'm still learning this gig, so my bad. But the first 13 minutes, there is an out of focus picture. But after that, it gets better. That's all I can say. Don't forget, if you like these kind of videos of success stories of people who are successful, not only since they've been released from prison, but also while they were in prison serving the community, then definitely subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000. Also share it with those who you think might benefit from it. Thanks. Well, I guess it doesn't matter where we go. I'm still going to be sweating like crazy. So we actually came from outside to the inside because outside it was too loud, but now we got other problems on the inside. So tell me about the seminary experience. So there was this whole drama of getting into the seminary. Right. And so what was that like, the first day, first couple of semesters, and just in general, what was it like for you as a student in the seminary?
First day, it was it's pretty like a culture shock all over again, because I've done so much time in prison and then having to go into an academic setting. And so there's a whole nother lingo, another language that I had to learn there. The challenges of making a transition from being inside a controlled environment to a controlled environment that's an educational environment versus a prison environment.
Yeah.
And so going back and forth there. And so the first day, like I said, it was culture shock because now I'm in an environment where the expectations are higher. The opportunity is greater, but it was a sense of purpose being in there for me because I wasn't so much as an academic student as someone who just loved the Lord. Now that has the transition to academics where I'm expected to make the grade, but maintain a moral character that's fitting for someone who's in seminary school. And so that first day, I never forget our English professor, Brad Heller.
Yeah.
And Dr. Heller, he told us, he said, listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to write me a 1-page paper on why you got in the seminary and who are you. And so I'm sweating bullets at this point because, my educational level is not there yet. And so one of my good friends who later became a mentor to me, Vondre Cash, was sitting on side of me, and I'm thinking, okay, it's just one paper. Maybe I should ask Cash to help me with this. But then I said, no, you know what? I'm just gonna write, and whatever I put on the paper, the spelling, I'm not concerned with that. So I just wrote, I just expressed why I was there and the purpose for me and what I felt God was calling me to do. And it was funny because when he picked those papers up and he said, okay, now I'm gonna grade you on progress. And so wherever you're at right here, I got your papers and I'm going to grade you on the progress. And I thought to myself, I'm glad I didn't get Vondre to help me with this paper because it was my own expression, of the challenges that I had and why I'm there. But it was a lot of pressure because now the reality started to sit in that I'm not just doing prison time. It's something bigger. It's God time. And at the same time, man, when we had the pre-semester and you gave us the talk, you explained to us about learning the language and one of the dangers of being a theological or a seminary student. And I never forgot that you said rule number one, pride will creep in.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful of that because you'll start critiquing people who come in as volunteers, and you'll make judgment calls on them based on what you're learning, and that was a big danger. And I think that's one of the lessons, that's a life lesson because, sometimes subconsciously I see myself doing it, whether I'm watching TV or wherever I'm at, or especially when I was on the field as a field minister, guys who were, we were helping along or feathering in with their ministries, being careful of that pride element. But those first few years, seminary was actually the hardest for me that first year, because there were times I actually wanted to quit. There were times I came in and I was having what I didn't understand was anxieties, because I'm not a good tester, and so when it was time to take those tests, I would be like, man, I can't do this, I can't, and it was always the thing of protect your seat, protect your seat. And so it's like, okay, I gotta pass, I gotta study. And so developing those study habits, one of the things that was so great for me in those first few years was a revelation of realizing that I can learn, that I'm not who people had labeled me in times past. You're gonna be a dope dealer all your life. You're gonna end up in the prisons, and you're gonna be and some of that had come true. I had become a dope dealer, and I had become a prisoner or an inmate, but God was changing my DNA. He was changing my destiny.
Yeah.
And so once I discovered that I had the ability to learn, then it was like a new start in life. Academically, I had the new start as a Christian, but now in this academic arena, I can actually learn and retain some of this information. And it's just the culture that we had there with that first class. It was one of a brotherhood. I can't speak for anybody else, but us, it was a brotherhood that it was like no man left behind was the thing. And we kind of gelled together, finding those groups of our peers that helped us, ones that we had similar personalities and ones that challenged us. Because when we were first there, it was just us. So it wasn't all the plebes or anybody else. And so we had all this space to kind of discover who we are and how we learned and what was the importance of studying. I wasn't, like I said, a big academic guy. But seeing my peers around me and the sacrifices that they were making, they would spend time in the study labs and getting those rooms and challenge one another with remembering verses or dates, times, and so all that on top of prison life and then dealing with family life on the outside where you're corresponding with your family members, that was a whole lot to take on, but it was God. I mean, he was like pushing us in that direction, And so those first few years, I think they were saying like after the first 2 years, people, you're going to decide, because if they would have offered a
master's degree.
No, not a bachelor's, but an associate's. If they would have offered an associate's, man, I was gone. But it wasn't one offer.
Yeah.
See, that's how God, you're going to go all the way, you're not going to go at all. And so the challenges was there those first few years, but it was great. I loved it. I loved being challenged. I can remember when Dr. Wilsey gave us our first exam, and I had no clue of I had a clue in the pre-semester because you told us what syllabi and how to kind of organize those things. Yeah. But when Dr. Wilsey gave us that first test and it came back, and man, I made a 70. Mm-hmm. And I got on my knees and lifted my hands and I just started praising God. And Vondre's looking at me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I passed." He said, "You made a 70. Mm-hmm. He said, "Are you proud of it?" I said, "No, but I'm thankful." I didn't fall. And so it was moments like that, being with those guys, but also the challenges of being an academic student is something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
those first few years. So it was challenging. It was exciting on my family's part because they actually they're hearing me do something that has an effect on the lives of men, something I'm passionate about, which is the gospel and studying and learning, just not gospel. But one of the challenging things it wasn't just about reading the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, we had science, we had history, we had math, we had accounting. It was all these other academic fields that were included in English, that was included in the biblical studies. And it was actually making us whole. We were getting a real education, you know, and so that was important. Dealing with the staff there in the prison because it was something new. And so by me already being on Darrington before the program got there, I had knew some of the staff, but they actually got to see the transition from just being an ID unit to actually being a seminary planted there, and the impact that it was having with the men being shipped in and other guys being shipped out. And so the culture was already changing even before we even graduated. God was already doing the work there. And so I had the privilege of being there before and knowing what Darrington was like a few years before the seminary actually had started. And so dealing with the staff and some of the liberties that we had there, how it challenged the way prison was done traditionally. You know, wait a minute, you got these guys who are inmates, or back in that we would call offenders.
Yeah.
You have these offenders and they're being allowed to walk up and down these hallways, or they're being allowed to minister or care, show concern for other men outside of a chapel setting.
Yeah.
You know, hold on, what's going on here? When men started standing in bunk areas and encouraging other men on the mission field, you know, and having that liberty. I mean, that was because everybody wasn't ready for that. You know, I think the analogy was used as like a big ship. You know, it doesn't turn at the drop. It takes a wide turn. And so all those years of just plowing the ground, those 4 years of just laying a foundation, and each year as a group came in, bringing in those other guys and kind of saying, hey, this is how the culture is turning, because we had to learn how to deal with the Nigerian people who were working there and understand their culture, you know, and building those relationships, and the importance of me going before you and setting the precedence for the guys that are coming after me.
Yeah.
Because if you're a field minister, they're gonna look at you as a field minister, and they're gonna view all field ministers after the impression that you give them. And so those opportunities that we had to the small groups where we talked to the plebes that were coming in and explained to them, hey, this is Darrington's culture, and this is how this culture is changing. And so this is the groundwork that God is laying, because it would.
Yep, okay, go.
Yeah, because it was times when you remember when they moved, they wouldn't allow my classmates to live in the dorms.
Yeah.
And so that was a big ruckus. But I was blessed to still be in the dorm.
Yeah.
And so it was times when they were verbal assaults. You know, like, man, well, why are you getting to stay down there? But I had already knew that my position there was going to open a door for other men if I carried myself in a certain manner, if I kept my grades up, if I continued doing ministry the way, and it paid off, because that's what they used. Where if he's able to do it, then why can't these guys do it?
Well, I was remembering a lot when you were talking about all that stuff. I helped a guy the other day, one of the Lee College students, and he didn't have any real background on how to study. Like kind of like you were mentioning, or a lot of the guys were talking about. And so I just gave him a few tips on how to study for an exam that he took of mine on Friday.
Okay.
I told him on Tuesday, I was like, study this, and that on Wednesday, this, and that on Thursday, and then a little bit on Friday.
Right.
And so come Friday for the exam, he aced it. He was like, I just want to thank you. That helped me so much.
Yeah.
But it's just that a lot of people, they don't think they can learn, because he came in like a lot of people did. He told me when he first got in there, I got problems remembering stuff. I'm not a great student.
Right.
I hear that so much, and I already know what it is. Nobody's ever showed them how to memorize or study or pay attention. And so just a few little things, and he was real grateful for that. So I knew that with all of you guys, I was like, you probably just ain't had nobody show you
Right.
what you need to do. But once you do, and then you got it,
Yeah.
so many things will change.
And it's so many techniques, depending on the individual. That was one of the things that made Vondre so great, because he identified each one of us in that study group and how we learned. And so he was able to pattern his teaching method based on an individual's ability to learn, and in a group setting, target each one of us.
Yeah.
I mean, that was amazing. Like with Leslie, he drew race cars on the board, and he said, "That there's Dale Earnhardt," and he would say, let's say something like they had the Council of Trent. Trent launches driving Dale Earnhardt's car. And so he was able to visualize that, and retain that, and so that's how he worked with us. He was real patient with us.
Yeah.
So I mean, but most definitely, once you learn how you learn, for me, it's repetition and just taking it in increments, like you said, and studying, putting in the time to study. Because in prison, I was still helping them out in the kitchen sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I would wake up early in the morning. Those are my peak hours, like from between 4 and 12 o'clock, I'm peaking. So I know then, okay, if I'm going to do some studying, I got to get up early in the morning, I got to do my prayer meditation, and then study. And once I reach that 12 o'clock point, then it's kind of like, okay, let my brain relax. And so what I would do is continue that cycle. And plus we had the study groups in the evening because we had the study hall open. So I would go down there and it's kind of reiterating some things. And so one of the things that helped me deal with the anxiety of test taking was Vondre would always tell me, he said, "Hey, you studied all week. Leave it on the field. What's ever in there, it's in there." Because what would cause the anxiety for me is on the day of the test, I would get in there early and start going back over my notes.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, you don't have to do that. We studied all week. We had a good study week. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Just calm down, breathe, and just leave it on the field. And so we would always say that. And that helped me because I would sit there and I'd be like, okay, Lord, I studied. I did my best. I know. Okay, here we go. Because it was always the thing with one of our professors said, don't call on the Holy Spirit and you ain't putting nothing in. God is not just going to zap you with, no, you have to do your part, which is the study and the preparing and making those sacrifices when you wanted to go play basketball. No, we got study group. Or you wanted to do something else, you go to study group and you invest the time in study. And
y'all had a bunch of sayings like that and things to motivate everybody. I don't know if you were in the room when, I think it was probably the second class that came in, and we had done a town hall. We had you guys like giving advice to the new guys, the plebes. I don't even think we were calling them plebes at that time. And we were talking about, just advice. And I remember Townsend, Bobcat, stood up and he said, the best advice I give you is not to fall in love with your paper. He said, because you got to let people edit it and it's going to hurt and they're going to chop you up.
Oh, man. Hey, and I'm going to tell you that when we did, because you showed us a paper you had originally. You said, look at my paper. And it had that red writing on there.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. That's part of the process of editing.
Yeah.
And so we did a book review for Dr. Wilsey on the Aeneid.
Is this when he got all over y'all?
Man, let me tell you something. And that's why I respect, if I see him today, I'm going to call him Dr. Wills. I'm not going to call him, he's Dr. Wills to me. He ain't going to be nobody. And when we turn those papers in and everybody's excited, yeah, we did the interview, we got it in, we got the book report done and on time and all that. And we come back and he starts handing out those papers. And I'm talking about
I think all but like maybe 2 or 3.
Yes, 2 or 3. And it's like you could see the red from the back of the room on these papers.
Yeah.
And this was really like one of those aha moments or those turning point moments. Because Dr. Wills, and
Wills is the littlest guy on Darrington, but he has the biggest presence. And he stood up there and he said, I'm not going to accept this. You know, and he's looking at us and he said, I'm not going to accept this. He said, you guys are better than this. This is not academic work. He said, I'm not here to pat you on the back. He said, I'm here because I believe that God is doing it. And he said, I'm not going to accept this. He said, if these papers are not done over, you will fail.
Yeah.
You are not who they say you are. You are better. And I'm sitting there and he used some of these big words. I'm thinking to myself, I think this guy just cussed me out in academic terms.
Yeah. I remember when Derek come in the office afterwards and he said something real fly. He said, I can't even remember what he said. It was something like, I never had a white man talk to me like that.
Hey, he went, but you know what that did? That set a fire up under us.
Yeah.
That set a fire up under us because we couldn't play the game no more.
Mm-hmm. And that was early on too.
That was early. That was early, and that was perfect timing because it set the stage for the rest of. We knew what to expect.
Yeah.
You know, we knew what the expectancy level was, and for me, I finally had somebody to tell me that you're better than that. You know what I'm saying? That I'm not going to accept that from you. You know, and it's like, and you know what I did? I got that paper, I dusted my shoulders off, and I went back and redid it. You know, and I started leaning more on letting other people edit it. Mm-hmm. You know, hey man, I need help. Okay, it's not what, I don't just want to give him what he's looking for. I want to give him what I got out the paper.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not a cookie cutter thing. But Brad Heller, man, I mean, one of the most powerful moments because Brad Heller actually got me. And he told me, we did a presentation one day. That was part of our grade. And I did one on shower etiquette. You know, how not to shower at Darrington.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm serious. You know, I'm like, if it's six spigots if it's six heads on the spigot there for a shower, that don't mean six people get in.
Yeah.
You know, or don't keep your back to the wall when you're drying off type stuff. Mm-hmm. And the presentation was, and you know what he told me the next day? I'm walking up the hall, and this man stops in the middle of the hall, and he gets down on one knee. And he tells me, he said, you're most definitely not a writer. He said, but you're the best speaker I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And he said, that's your gift. You speak. And I'm looking at him, and this is my professor.
Yeah.
And I get down on my knee with him. I said, no, man. No. And he said, I mean it. He said, you're a great speaker. And he said, you got it. And I said, yes, sir. And that was like another affirmation, you know, from somebody that I deemed credible. I had a lot of respect for because he was real transparent with us, you know, with his struggles and his desires. And so I respected him because he pushed us. You know, that's the type of stuff that we got. We got the push. We got the, you better than that. You know, you're not who they say you are. And man, that day when you said, man, we protect y'all from a lot of negative press because everybody is not applauding what's going on here. Right. And so I think that was very vital too in my development, because if you push me, I'm gonna want to push back. And so shielding us from that, you know, we were hearing from the outside a lot what was going on, but a lot of the negative press we didn't hear, but we were hearing the push coming from our professors, people that we respected, and they pushed us. So I think it would have been received a little different if we'd have just got the negative press from them, and that well, y'all can't tell me nothing, no way. Y'all didn't want me out there in society anyway. So, you know, but no, we were shielded from that, and we got it from where we needed it from. Yeah. In the right way and in the right spirit, that, hey man, you better than that. You know, you may be here, but God has a plan for your life. You know, there's still purpose, and we're not going to settle for mediocre. You represent someone bigger than yourself, you know, and that type of environment we had down there. You know, that was the type of seminary experience that helped shape and mold us and helped push us to become men of virtue, because it wasn't just about the grades. And I remember them saying, if your character doesn't change, because we're not just monitoring your grades. You can make the dean's list, you can do all that, but at the end of those 4 years, if you just is riding to the core, then you're not Southwestern material.
Yeah.
So we wanted a whole transformation. And so I think that was more important for me as well, is allowing God to transform me, even and understanding the importance of why we have the written word. I think it was, I call him Billy the Kid, Keither Sutherland, Professor Presley. And Presley said something that was so important about the written word. And he said, how do you think it got preserved all those years? It was wrote down.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of Professor Heller's class, is learning how to write, And when you write something down, if you say something, people will catch about 10% of what's being said. Some statistic he gave, he said, but if you write it down, they'll always have it to go back to. And so that pushed us in the area where, because the professors were working together in a sense, because we would complain to one professor about the other professor, and the other professor would, no, this is why he pushes you like that. And so you're like, oh, okay, I got it. Okay, he's not the enemy. He loves me. And so we bought into that. We bought into the caring. We bought into the excelling. We bought into that it's bigger than us. We bought into that, hey man, if the system's gonna change, we're the change agent. We're the guys right here. They spend billions of dollars on trying to change the culture, and it's Jesus, and this is it. And we're right here, and it's being handed to us to go out and be those disciples inside of prison, because I started looking at it as my environment, my community.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like to be a field minister now. This was a huge event for the prison system, because we went back and forth talking about what you guys were going to be called, what kind of things you would be allowed to do.
Right.
And historically, there's this one inmate can't have authority over another, and that just wiped out so many things. But they settled on field minister of all things. And a lot of the things you guys were able to do at the different units was unheard of, first time ever. In fact, it was some of the wardens, when we went to Angola, I think it was we walked death row, I think it was. And there was field ministers. I don't know what they called them, but there was people walking the death row in SEG. And one of the people from Texas was like, this will never happen in Texas. Never will an inmate walk unattended ministering to people in SEG and death row. They said, this will never happen in Texas. And fast forward 5 years, and y'all didn't make it on death row yet, although I think there's some people on Pulaski now. But
yeah, they're on Pulaski.
But y'all were walking SEG on Darrington, probably before y'all even graduated.
Right.
So it was just really ironic that I believe as a warden, somebody from security was like, this will never happen in Texas. And it was happening in 4 years.
Right. And that was, when May 2015, and the 20th, I think it was the end of that month, we were already on those buses.
I know, it was fast.
It was fast. But when we got let me tell you, from the chain experience was different. Because we were allowed to take all our property with us.
I do remember those.
And we were on buses together. And so as we were leaving Darrington, we were still connected. And everybody had their orders. We were excited about the mission field of going to do what God has called us to do. Now we're finally, everything that we were trained for, we're getting ready to go out in these teams. Well, when we get there, and this is what made the missions class, which was Dr. What was his name? Taught our missions class.
Was it Wood?
No, not Wood.
Jones?
Dr. Jones. And Dr. Jones had us do mock scenarios of when we get there, what could go wrong. And so when we get to Michael's unit, those scenarios came in place. And so we're sitting there and they're like, okay, well, what do we do with you guys? What do you feel called to do?
Yeah. A lot of the wardens didn't know what to do.
Right. But we had the support of our warden at that time.
Jones. His name was Jones too, Mark Jones.
Right, but when we got shipped off, when we got shipped to Michael's unit.
Oh, who the warden was? Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember his name. But we had the support of our warden, then our chaplain. And so when we sat down, he just simply asked me, what do you feel God is calling you to serve in as a field minister? And so he had a list of what we could do and what we couldn't do. We had a meeting with our warden. First it was weekly, daily. We had and which was good because it kind of allowed us to see who we were, the leadership there and his vision for the unit, and where did he need us the most? Where could we serve in this community the most? And his thing was, hey, segregation area. Then he moved to 8 building, and it was 7 building, those guys over there who don't get out as much. But a lot of, because it was new, we ran into a lot of resistance from staff itself. Yeah. You know, because here you have these guys who are walking around with badges on, and where are you going? You know, don't you stay in the dorms? Yeah. Yes, ma'am, I do, but this is my job. Well, who gave you that job? They didn't talk about it in the ship, so we ran into a lot of that. So it was a lot of times when we would come back, debriefing, and be like, man, what challenges you ran into today? Man, she screamed at me. Well, how did you handle it? You know, I bit that. You know, I turned around and just went in another direction. And so for the first few months there, I mean, it was kind of like that until people got to know us, until the officers got familiar with us. And then they started coming out with IOCs, you know, with our pictures on it, which made it smoother. Yeah. But you still had the skeptics because, wait a minute, they're in white too. So what makes them so different? Yeah. Or everybody has a con game, you know, but showing them differently, you know, and getting to know those guys in our dorms. I mean, because the prison population had an ideal about us too, you know, and the plan was not to come in and usurp anybody's ministry there, but to kind of tether in with those guys. And so we met opposition from the people who were actually inside the church. That was a lot of opposition. Well,
and we figured that would happen.
Yeah, and so you come in, and the best thing that I found was to serve. And so when we went in, hey, how can we help clean up the gym? You know, how can we help set up the chairs? Oh, you don't want to preach? Oh, what do you need me to do? You know, how can we serve? And once we establish that we're here to serve and not to take over, we started hearing the conversations, you know, where we were told that y'all come to take over the church and that y'all gonna put guys out of position. That's not why we're here.
Well, even the chaplains thought that early on. The chaplains thought that y'all were gonna replace them, right? Because of budget cuts.
And we heard that, you know, and we heard that in a few years. They're not gonna need any chaplains because they're training up these field ministers to be able to do this. And so it was opposition coming from all sides in that. But in the midst of that, we still were doing time. Yeah. We still were dealing with family issues. We still were dealing with personal issues. But God, in His sovereignty, kept us going in the right direction because, once again, it was bigger than us. But yeah, we had that opposition, you know, especially, like you said, from our peers, the very people that we came to join alongside of in ministry had these barriers up because of what was said before we got there. So we had to show them that, no, man, we're here to serve alongside of you guys. We're here to open up doors of opportunity for you because we can go places you can't go. You know, when church service is over, your fellowship stops there with the guys who are on 7 building. But for us, it just started. We made a connection because I can go to 7 building. I got access to 7 building to go down and minister to those guys in their day room, door to door, when they in their cells in the more intimate setting where there's not the influence of guys around them. And those were some of the times where deep ministry took place. You know, one of the greatest privileges was that we were on call 24 hours a day. So whenever staff needed us, once we started building that credibility with staff, we would get calls at 2, 3 in the morning. Hey, I need you to go to 7 building. I need you to go to 12 building.
And why was that? So explain some of the things that you guys were able to do, because I remember a lot of those stories, and that's when we quickly realized y'all need a break, like, because y'all not gonna be able to go for years on end,
Right.
all 24 hours a day.
Right.
We realized real quick there's something's got to be done. But
Right.
what were the kind of things that you'd be called out for?
Right. I'd be called out for suicide attempts.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be called out for counseling. I've been called out for guys who have been forced to leave their living area because of their peers didn't want them living in there. In other words, in prison terms, guys they wanted to make catch out.
Yeah.
I've been called for that. I've been called for guys who are in hospice, who are sick, who are getting ready to die, and they're like, man, I don't want to die alone. You know, so you get that call and you're like, hey, they need you in hospice. And so you're gone. Or if an officer was having been called out, if an officer had somebody in the day room, he didn't want to talk to the officer. And so the officer would call and say, hey, man, this guy, he doesn't want to talk to me. I don't know what's going on. Could you talk to him and see what's going on and mediate there? And being able to go in and talk and see what's going on with the guy. And he's like, man, this is what the problem is. And then going in and mediate, you know, hey, this is what he's dealing with, you know. And I don't know how y'all going to handle it, but here's the problem. This is what he's telling me. It's been times been called out to just pray with somebody. Hey, he wants somebody to pray with him. Can you pray with him? Or just sit with him. Can you sit with him? It was one time I was called, I specifically remember, to say it, and the guy was in the, he was under, what do they call it? Constant direct observation.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was in there and they called me out to go talk to him. And so this guy had been hearing voices. And I went to the door, the officer was sitting in front of the door, and I went to the door and I said, hey, how you doing? And he said, oh, I'm good. He said, but they're telling me to kill myself. And I said, well, who are they? And he said, they're standing there. They're standing right there. I said, okay. I said, let me ask you a question. And he said, yeah. I said, are you a Christian man? Do you believe in God? And he said, yeah. I said, do you hear his voice anytime? And he says, yes. I said, well, what is he telling you? And he's telling me not to do it. I said, okay, those other voices, I don't want you to listen to them. I said, you focus in on that one. And I started sharing with him. I said, now, let me tell you how important you are to God. I said, don't you know that you're fearfully and wonderfully made? That God made you in his image and that he has a purpose for your life? Don't you know that you're engraved, your name is engraved in the palm of his hands? And that he cares for you, he loves you so much that he gave the very best that he had so you can be in a relationship with you. And was able to use the scriptures to get him to see his value, to listen to the voice of God and not those voices that was telling him to harm himself. And so after leaving there that night, I told him, I said, I'm going to come back tomorrow and check on you, because they called me out. It was like early in the morning. I said, I'm going to be able to come back tomorrow and check on you. I said, but I need you to promise me one thing. And he said, well, I said, promise me you won't harm yourself. You won't cut yourself. You won't listen to those voices. And he said, you coming back tomorrow? Mm-hmm. I said, I promise you, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm coming back tomorrow. I got access. I can come back here. And he said, all right. He said, you come back tomorrow. And so I left, got me some sleep, came back and checked on him. No, didn't have to deal with, well, why are you going back there? No, I was called out because we're logged. And that's one of the things I loved about Michael's unit. They logged the stuff in. Yeah. And so it was logged in that a field minister was called out and he went and visit this guy who was on a direct observation, suicide watch, and that I was coming back. So when I came back, I didn't have the problems at 12 building, because that's like getting in Fort Knox. Mm-hmm. But we didn't have that problem. So I was able to go back and see him and do a follow-up and then log that in in a book and log that in with Chaplain Taylor, who was our chaplain at that time. And those morning debriefings or those morning devotions that we did, Chaplain Taylor made sure we did them. And so we would sit down and he was like, okay, what do you guys have planned for today? Where are you going today? Remember the count times, because that was some of the things that we kind of got mixed up a lot. And one of the most important things on any unit is count time. Yeah. And so we stressed that amongst one another. It's how you always check in for count. Wherever you're at, no matter where, make sure you get on that count. And so when we had those morning devotions and we went out, we kept track of that. But that was important, being able to do that.
So he was all good?
Yeah, the guy, he was good. He was good. Went back the next day. And matter of fact, his last name was Green. Went back the next day and had an opportunity to talk with him, visit him several other times after that. And man, he was good, and encourage him. Hey, this is not how God wants you to live back here in solitary confinement. There's an opportunity for you to be out in general population, take advantage of that. These people are not your enemy.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times guys want to express anger at the correctional officers. They're not your enemy. They had nothing. They didn't even know you when you committed your crime. They just sent you here, and so they're just trying to do their job. And once you get guys to see that and they calm down and really listen to somebody that can identify, because that's one of the biggest advantages of being a field minister is that I'm in white just like you, man. I know what it's like to wait on mail or not get visits or not be able to go to commissary or I have to eat Johnny's. I understand the struggle. I'm here with you. I'm not somebody from the outside. And that's one of the big advantages of being a field minister is that you have instant credibility and being able to identify, because it's one peer ministering to another. It's peer support, and so they see us like that when we walk according to the way we're called to walk, when we're doing what we're supposed to do.
So after you spent 6 years walking the halls of different prisons, doing that sort of thing, what was it like for you once you realized you had made parole? After 24, 25 years.
25 years.
Knowing that now the day is coming, you're going to make parole.
Hey, it was, you're going to make me cry. Still a shock.
Yeah.
Man, I can remember I was sitting in the chapel office and I got the news that I had an FI and I cried. I fell on the floor and I cried. And it was still like, I get to go home.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa. And it some days, since it's almost 90 days, it's like getting close to 80. I still, am absorbing it.
Yeah. It's just, I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I'm still, it's like, but I'm grateful because I left a lot of men who are doing 24 years worth of set-offs.
Yeah.
Men who will never see the outside of consecutive life sentences, who will never see the outside of prison, but have a passion for God, just on fire for God. And so it's like, God is saying, I'm giving you an opportunity to take this on the outside and continue to build on it. It was something that was said that God released me to increase me. With that comes great responsibility, to the people who donated, the people who gave me the scholarship, all the TDC people who invested in the program, who said, okay, we believe in what you guys are doing. Okay, go and do it. And so to make parole is saying, okay, you've shown us that you can be faithful in here.
Yeah.
Now here's another opportunity for you. And so for me, it was overwhelming. It still is, because I can ride in a car.
Yeah.
I can fix me some cereal if I want to eat some cereal. I catch myself sometimes taking my toothbrush and stuff to the room with me. And that's to stay in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But it's great. Words can't, and I'm grateful. I really am grateful for the opportunity that's been given me. Just like with any other, it was something when Rick Perry came that time and you didn't realize how big it was until you actually start seeing everything going on around you.
Yeah.
But when he said, you know, I'm proud of you guys and take advantage of the opportunity that's been given to you. And that resonates, that never stops, Take advantage of the opportunity that's been given to you. And then you are a part of something bigger than yourself. And so 2015, the first class, you're pioneering because there are going to be other men who are going to come behind you. And you want them to have a greater opportunity than what you've had, a greater experience than what you had. And so I'm finding, okay, well, where are you going to plant me that I can be a trailblazer for the next guy that's coming? You know, my next frat brother, who's a field minister, who's going to get that opportunity, or who's going to hear that answer. Hey, you made parole. And so for me, it was huge because my family had done all that time with me. Yeah. You know, a lot of them died. You know, my mother died. My dad's still living. My brothers are still here. And so for them to get that news that he's coming home, you know, but they knew I wasn't coming home. I left. I'm new. I'm a new creation. And so the excitement, you know, and I've been blessed that I have a family who's able to support me through my transition, where I don't have to get right out and start trying to catch up, but just catch in. Yeah. Take your time. That's really important. Yeah, take your time. And so it still is, man. I mean, it's still only been 90 days. Yeah, I'm celebrating like every day. Yeah. I'm just grateful. You know, I don't want to lose that. God, I'm just grateful for the day because I remember what it was like, you know, and the only thing I can compare it to, I remember Egypt. I don't want those cucumbers. I don't want those Johnnies. I don't want that. I'm grateful that you planted me here. And I forgot who said it, but my worst day out here is better than my best day in there. Yeah. You know, it's the opportunity to be a productive citizen. It's the opportunity to pay your taxes. It's the opportunity to earn a living, get a job. I'm not standing on the street corner worried about somebody gonna shoot me or what's going on or doing drug deals. No, you got a fresh new start. You got what you dreamed about, what you prayed about, you know, to be a productive citizen, to have influence. And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm talking about being a productive citizen, paying taxes, you know, not worrying about standing on the street corner, because this to me, for you guys, I imagined back in 2011, I was like, not all of them have consecutive life sentences. I think Marion has like consecutive sentences. And I was like, but you know, not all of them do. Y'all are going to come home someday. Right. And we need to be ready when that happens. Right. And it doesn't seem like very many people jumped on that train. They just had the vision of inside. Right. But y'all are out now. Right. And that, I think that was one of the shocks to me, because I had expressed that while I was still in there, and I'm getting ready to come up for parole, and I'm like, look, I really don't have any job skills. You know, I got a lot of stuff learned in prison, but I've been doing field ministry for so long. I haven't been working. Is there anything in place, you know, that once we transition out of here, and it was like brushed under the rug. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, you're doing good. You're all right. You're going to be okay. But once we transitioned out, which was Tracy was out before me, and I think I was the last one to get out of the four that's out. And so I'm like, well, what did you guys do? Or, you know, who came alongside? And it was like nobody that we expected. Mm-hmm. You know, the people that we expected, you know, and I took it as, well, they were there for a season. Yeah. You know, and their season is up. And so now I mean, when I was on YouTube and I seen the video, I'm like, whoa, they're actually doing something. Mm. But I mean, it was your calling, you know, that you connect us. If you'd have told me of all the people when we first started this, that Brandon Warren would be the one reaching out to us and putting us together and walking us through how to
do a cell phone or
and all that. You know, I'd be on a Zoom call and how to read my GPS.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you would be the farthest person from my mind. But that's how God works. You know, when you think you got him figured out, he throws and it's the least likely person that you thought of will be the one that, and man, I mean, I just like to thank you. But yeah, it's been that type of transition.
Well, that's one of the things that I hope we all work together. Thankfully, all four of you had families who were ready and willing to help in a number of ways. So none of you of the four have been stuck out. Kenneth is with Charm Ministries, and so he's well taken care of. But we might end up with someone who come out to nothing, and so we need to be ready for that. So that's one of the few things I need to do is try to figure out who's next. Tracy or maybe it was Mark said Pedro's next.
Little Pedro?
Yeah. So Jake actually got a 3-year set off.
Jay Strickland?
Yep. I assumed that when y'all would come up for parole, it would be a no-brainer, but he got a 3-year set off.
And that was a possibility.
That hurt me.
Because remember, they said it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
This is not a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
So it was.
That was one of the things we talked about in the very, very beginning.
Right, in the very, very beginning. That this doesn't mean that you're gonna get out of prison.
Yeah.
And so, God, I didn't know that about Jay.
Yeah.
Because me and Jay.
Back in June.
Oh man. And so that even intensifies the gratefulness. Because it wasn't automatic that I would get out, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity and the people who invested, who took a chance and said, "Oh, you know what? We're gonna give you a yes vote. We're gonna give you a yes vote, but you get one yes vote. And so honoring that and respecting that, that thank you, for all those people who took a chance and said yes.
So what do you want to do now? What are your long-term goals, plans?
Long-term goal, the type of FI I had, it sent me through a lot of treatment facilities, dealing with substance abuse. And so my long-term goal is to achieve my LCDC, become a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and open up my own counseling center to be able to help men and women. And not only that, but those who are victims of violent crimes and those family members who have loved ones who are incarcerated, some of the do's and don'ts and some things to look aware of. Because, in prison, a lot of guys play game, and I've seen it because I've been on that side where they actually manipulate their family from the inside because they still have these addictions.
Yeah.
I've seen where guys went to visitation and cried and pleaded with their mothers to send money to other men's books or to do different illegal transactions, which was all game to support the drug habit.
Yeah.
But just informing them things to look for, but also going a step further with trying to reach those men, because we do a great job as far as the church dealing with the spiritual side. But what about the addiction? What about the psychological issues that they have to deal with? And I think when I went through those programs, it helped me to see that there's another side to this thing. I had it one way, but there's a whole nother arena that I'm not looking at, that God is working in that too, And so helping men deal with those addictions and those fears, and family members deal with having someone who's incarcerated, and look at the warning signs and the help that's available inside TDC. A lot of people don't realize that the resources that TDC has poured into helping people with addictions while they're still in there, and hopefully getting on a unit where I'm actually working from the outside inside there, reaching over the wall with AA. Because for me, all those years that I was in there, I've never went to AA. Can you imagine 25 years never going to an AA program?
Yeah.
Because of the prison stigma. But having been out and going through the program with my FI, I was going to AA meetings. I was attending a small group. I was reading Staying Sober, which is a book. And so I learned that it's more to recovery than just abstinence from alcohol. And men need to know that living with pause or post-acute withdrawals, being able to function without the alcohol and still live a productive life in other areas with stress, and identifying those triggers, helping them identify those triggers and how to deal with those triggers. So I want to go further with that. I want to make that a lifelong mission, is to help men with that. Because remember, when I go to AA, I tell them, I said, hi, my name is Calvin, I'm a recovering dealer. So I get to see the effects of what I did on people who had an actual addiction. In other words, the predator has become now the tool that God is using to help the prey. Because yes, and so that's what I want to do. I want to be able to help in those areas. Hey, I understand. And every time, like I said, when I go I get to hear the stories. And so it's a reminder of the importance of the mission. And we know that ultimately the gospel has the power to break every chain. But once that chain is broken, there's a renewing process. Now the cognitive part, the mind has to be renewed. And so what does that look like for someone who says, I don't know Jesus? Jesus is not okay, but the principles still work. If you look at the AA, the principles still work. And so that's my purpose, man. That's what I'm looking for.
And being involved with the church also. You say you wanted to be on staff with the church.
Yes, that's ultimately my goal too, is to be on full-time staff at church that I'm attending now, which is Antioch over here by Pasadena, Pastor Fred. But until then, those are my long-term goals. Till then, I'm just doing side jobs, working. And it's funny because the guy that I mentored in prison has been out for 5 years, and he's been living everything that we talked about in prison. He's taking care of his family. He's working. He has officially been placed as the head of the prison ministry at our church. And so he's on staff, and he told me, he said, man, he was making a bunch of money doing remodeling and flipping homes. And he said, when they asked me to be on staff, I gave it all up. And he said, it's the greatest feeling in the world. And I said, man, that's my long term, that's my desire, is to be on staff at church and do what I love to do and have the time to do it, because he still goes into prison. Matter of fact, he went into Darrington today. Yeah. That's cool. I know that some of the guys there are glad to hear about you getting out and your story and things like that. I've heard it, and I can't wait to love them.
Yeah.
When I got that phone call from the director and offering an olive leaf, how can we help? And I said, I'm trying to figure out how to get back in there and finish the work.
Yeah.
Because the field ministers, every unit that we went on, we had an impact. We met, man, pretty much everybody that wanted to meet us, we had access to them. If you didn't want to meet us, you still seen us. And so going back in and allowing them to see that hope.
And what did they say about that, going back in?
Well, Miss Pena told me, she said, get a letter from the warden on that unit and a letter of recommendation from my ministry on the outside. And she said she would type a letter.
Okay.
And she said,
Tracy and Mark and Kenneth, all of y'all want to go back in.
Right.
Usually the rule is 18 months out or whatever. You can go back in if you have special permissions, but I think that might be something that you four work together on to pitch to, the parole director or somebody like that to say, hey, we're field ministers. We just want to continue the work that we started. Right. And we could do it before 18 months or whatever.
Yeah. I think that would have a huge impact on the guys who were in there, especially long-term offenders, because for years, everything was done was geared towards those who were short-term offenders. If you have 2 years or less before you see parole, you were in these programs, But for the guys who were long-term offenders, this would give them some type of incentive, some type of hope, and then encourage them, hey, continue your education, pursue education, because it's going to be important. Take advantage of of everything that TDC is offering you as far as re-entry. One of the things that I'm running up against now is with the health insurance and with the job skills, and just take advantage of that. It may not seem important now, but it's very important, you know, for the future. And so you start building for your future, start getting ready for your transition now as if you're coming up next year. You know, like I said, take advantage of those programs. And that's another thing that the Field Minister program has been such a blessing in that area, where they allow us to put on these seminars, these job seminars, these parole seminars, and teaching men how to fill out a parole, how to do your own parole packet. I did my own parole packet based on the information that I had from the seminars that Melvin and Vondre and all these guys had put together.
Yeah.
I built my packet off of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of attending these seminars and having field ministers who are able to go in and organize that and put it together, because it's going to benefit you in the long run. But most definitely the desire to get back in and continue to work from the outside. Because once again, instant credibility. I've been where you at, I've sat where you sat, and this is how you're gonna see progress, and encouraging those men to do that. Because for years I sat there and I always said, Lord, will you do that for me? Oh, that's just that guy. Even when I heard your story, I'm like, how does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
How you do that for me? You know?
Yeah.
And so it encourages the men. And can you imagine a team of us going in there?
It can happen pretty quick. I mean, me and Tracy and Mark was all in Bastrop yesterday, so it can happen pretty quick.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something we ought to work towards.
Yeah.
In fact, speaking of things like parole packets, you know, Tracy's with Texas Inmate Family Association now. It was when I invited their former director into Darrington to meet Vondre, is how that relationship started. And then she started writing Vondre and Jake and some of the others and Tracy, and she continued to do so. And then so as Tracy made parole, as soon as he got out, he had a job. And so now he's the reentry policy director for the Texas Inmate Family Association. And so he is a part of the group that provided the parole packets and the parole seminars that Vondre was using. So
shout out.
Yeah. So we were all at their conference yesterday. And so that might be something where we need to work a little bit more, because now there's 4 of you,
right?
To continue, you know, reaching that network out. And I was asking somebody at the conference was like, she's like, my husband has been locked up for 15 years. I just found out about TIFA, the Texas Inmate Family Association, last year. She's like, how can we get the information out to more people? And so I said, Tracy, are you directly working with field ministers to like disseminate this kind of information? He said, you know, a little bit, but that might be something we could do, is to keep it connected and make use of the field ministers to spread good information. Oh,
most definitely, because that's those are your boots on the ground right there.
Yeah.
Those guys are walking the whole unit. You know, we start out one morning,
and there's over 200 of y'all now.
Oh man, that's a blessing.
Yeah, there's over 200.
It was an opportunity on Gib Lewis. Matter of fact, I had put together a list of tier walkers that the warden approved go along with us.
Tier walkers, they are the ones walking administrative segregation.
Yeah, and some of them general population. And so he screened them, men of character, and he said, listen, you're the field minister. He said, these guys work with you and you're mentoring these guys. I'm going to allow that. And so it increased our numbers from 4 to 16.
Yeah.
And so we were able to go out over the unit, cover the unit here, Pacific areas, and just minister guys. Once we hit a part, we break off in teams and just go and do one-on-one minister. And so it's growing. You know, I can just imagine where it's at now and the influence that these guys are having on the unit. So if you put the literature in their hands, and the importance of TIFA and educating guys on what TIFA actually does. Wow, most definitely. Beautiful thing.
Well, thanks for driving out here and trying this thing again. Well, I'm still sweating, but it's a whole lot better.
Man,
thanks for telling your story, and I hope that you'll come back and we'll do this regularly. You know, Tracy, I had Tracy on like 5 times already. Just talking about different issues that are relevant, you know what I'm saying? So
most definitely.
Look forward to it.
Look forward to it, most definitely. I appreciate you. Appreciate the opportunity. And thank you once again.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.